Ms. Epps, please tell us your name and whom you speak for.
I'm glad to. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Williams, for the opportunity to speak. I come to you, I suppose, in a few capacities. I'm a woman of color. I'm someone trained as an attorney and former public defender. Perhaps my most relevant role is I'm the mother of an 18-year-old Black boy who I'm scared for all the time. And I don't need data or studies to give me that fear. Actually, sir, I had prepared remarks, a statement to read, but Mr. Kagan, when you opened this hearing, my planned comments took a backseat to a remark you made. And pardon me for my voice shaking, but it struck me then, and it still strikes me now. And I hope I don't misquote, but I believe you said, in what I'm sure was a parent jest, you said, if you go over your time, you will be tased. And there were chuckles in the room, because it's, tough issue, tension, break the ice. But I don't know if you noticed that there were areas of real silence, and there were some of us who couldn't laugh. And I won't presume to speak for, I recognize there are other people in the room who've been brutalized, documented cases by police officers and other areas of law enforcement, but I couldn't laugh because even that joke about if you go over time, you'll be tased, had me shaking, thinking about the time, that I had made the mistake of going over my time, saying too much, and had it been against the criminal code of conduct to mouth off, I would have been guilty. But presently, that's not against the law. And so I guess what I'd like to say to you is that you serve as a presumptive ally, a sponsor of this bill, when even those of us who stand with us in our most casual language might not see how saying things like that can trigger bad memories and fearful thoughts. And in us, it concerns me, and it makes the need for a bill like this one even more important. And I hope I don't sound accusatory. What I mean is that when even the people on our side, on the side of justice and against injustice, can be lighthearted about something like being tased, that's part of the data as to why this bill needs to happen.
Ms. Epps, before you go into the body of your testimony, I want to thank you for referring to that. I think you're absolutely right. I think it was an extraordinarily tasteless comment on my part. So as soon as I made it, sometimes you say things, you think, what on earth, how, that was a foolish thing to say. So I want to thank you for drawing my attention to that. And I want to acknowledge that you're absolutely correct about that. It was an insensitive and tasteless remark, and I regretted it the minute I said it, but I have appreciation for you making that point there as well. Thank you. Please proceed.
I appreciate you saying that, sir, and I can tell you that in terms of saying something and immediately regretting it, I've got a few of those in my past as well. I want to come back quickly to speak about the substance of this bill. I say we, and I mean those of us who have survived police brutality, but that status of being Black or Latino or poor, differently abled, the importance of this bill is that it goes beyond saying, talk about racial profiling, but there are important categories that need to be protected, and I'm glad to see this I believe one of 10 bills addressing police reform. Secondly, next to lastly, Mr. Salazar used the word, he talked about building trust, and I wasn't sure whether or not that was a conscious choice to not say rebuild, or whether it was or not, but I appreciated the distinction because we pay a lot of lip service to this idea of rebuilding and restoring. But I've asked my grandparents and my older uncles to point me to the point in Colorado's history where poor Black people or poor Latinos or lots of groups ever trusted armed state agents. And I don't know that it existed. And so I think even by using words like build, we pay a lot of lip service to accountability. But this, as one of these bills, is one that will actually help us do something. Lastly, sir, I still, PTSD is real, as a side note, I still feel that. It seems to me that there's anticipated pushback from members of law enforcement. And I'm not sure who in the room is here to speak for them and who isn't, but I would remind you all to look at your constituencies in general and also look at the makeup of this room. Look at the differences in the skin color and the age and the generations and the sex and the gender and the LGBTQ identity of people who are here supporting this bill. And we are not making this up. As you've said, as our president has said, there's few things more undermining of one's humanity to have to testify before strangers to demand your own dignity, to have to testify to someone about what your son feels or what he experiences. So I thank you for the opportunity, and I want to congratulate you in advance for seeing this through, for helping to push through and get this enacted, and getting Colorado in the news for the right reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Epps. Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm really glad you brought that comment about tasing up, not because I wanted to see our chair squirm, but because it went right by me. And I think that, if nothing else, explains why this is important, because it did go right by me, because I never have been afraid of being tased. And, you know, it was, well, maybe in the 60s with protests, perhaps, but that was a long time ago, so I can't say never, actually, but almost never. Yeah, that was before tasers, wasn't it? Okay, smart pants. Anyway, my point is, it's a serious point, that you and other members of the audience probably felt it, but lots of members of the audience and or this panel didn't feel it. Well, I can't speak for everybody up here, but I didn't feel it. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's a really important point, and that's part of this whole discussion, because I keep going back to what can move us forward. And yes, this bill is a piece of it, but it sure isn't all of it. But being aware of something as relatively minor as that language in our everyday lives can be part of it. So thanks for pointing that out.
Representative Sansa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for being here. I'm not slithering. She sent me a tweet one time saying, "Are you Slytherin house? Because your stuff was on her back." But you know, I want to say something. When the good chair said his comment, I was like, you know, because I understand. I come from where you come from on this, but let me tell you something. Proof is always in the pudding about an individual, right? And this good and honorable chair, not only in his record, but in who he is as a human being, I know that he understands the issues of our communities. And he has voted in such a way that it's always led me to believe that that he is very honorable when it comes to our communities. And not that statement cannot be said for everybody on this panel, but it certainly can be said about this good and honorable chair. So I feel in you, but I think back in terms of my own experience with the chair, and I know that that it was probably something that, you know, he was like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. But his record and what he has done in his life demonstrates to me that it was just a little bit of a mess.
Ms. Epps.
Yeah, just in brief, sir. 2 points. One is, I think you're doing an excellent job, Representative Salazar, of running for whatever the next thing he can appoint you to is. That is, I certainly would support you. But I mean it when I say I'm not being accusatory.
No.
I've been in Colorado for 4 years. I moved here. We hope that most of you all never need to know that you actually have the best public defender in the nation. We hope you don't need to know that personally, but you do. I moved here for that reason, to work here in this office. And the incident that traumatized me happened in 2012. I stayed away from my earlier life, I'm older than I look, was in politics and was being involved. And this is my first time coming, because I've always felt like they were sort of throwing bones, just PR stunts, that something wasn't substantive. And the content of this bill is different, the package of them, and seeing you all, this matters. So I don't take it lightly, but I also want you to understand, sir, that even the ability to address you on that is because it feels like it's a safe space. I'm not gonna have that conversation with an officer when I'm not gonna try to explain to him the nuances of white privilege or power dynamics or things like that on the side of the road. So it wasn't intended as a slight, and I appreciate how you received it, and I just hope you can extrapolate and understand that from that comment, right, how that little seed, how it can grow.
I totally, I think you raise a very valid point, and I appreciate you doing it. Are there any questions from Ms. Epps, Representative Butler?
Just a statement. I appreciate you coming because some of your statements have set off more thought from me that I needed to have. And you said something just in the last statement that I think we do have to have a conversation about privilege. Because if we don't have a conversation about privilege, it will always be about the disadvantages that our society places on groups, with groups that don't understand those disadvantages because they're covered with privilege. And so that is the essence of what it is that this bill is doing. It's given us our opportunity to discuss privilege alongside disadvantage. And it's an important part of what it is that we're attempting to do. Thank you so much for coming.
Any further questions from Ms. Epps? Ms. Epps, we're grateful for your contribution here this afternoon.